I first saw her on a Tuesday. It was raining, not the kind of heavy, dramatic storm you read about in novels, but a soft, misty kind of rain, the kind that makes the world feel like it's whispering secrets. Her name was Claire. And from the moment I laid eyes on her, something shifted in me. I was standing in line at a small bookstore cafe in Charleston, South Carolina. One of those quiet, tucked-away places with wood-paneled walls, bookshelves that seemed to breathe, and the constant scent of espresso and paper. She was in front of me, struggling to juggle a stack of books and her umbrella. One of the books slipped from her arms, The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath, and before I could react, it landed near my feet. I bent down, picked it up, handed it to her. Our hands brushed. "Thanks," she said, flashing a quick, grateful smile. Then she looked me in the eyes, and time paused. You ever have that feeling where a stranger looks at you like they already know you? Yeah. That. I remember stammering something stupid about how that was one of my favorite books, and she said, "Really? Then you must be a little haunted." She smiled again. Teasing, but kind. We ended up sitting at the same table that day. She was working on a short story, scribbling in a leather journal with a broken pen. I offered her mine. We talked for hours, about books, dreams, music, places we wanted to travel to. The rain kept falling outside like background music to our growing connection. She had this way of talking, like every word she said mattered. Like she chose them carefully, like words were tiny gifts. She laughed with her whole face, and when she got excited about something, she'd tuck her hair behind her ear and lean in, like she couldn't wait for you to feel what she was feeling. That day turned into more days. She liked morning walks and hated crowds. She was allergic to strawberries but loved the smell of them. She kept Polaroids in a shoebox under her bed, not of events, but of colors, patterns, shadows on sidewalks. She saw beauty in everything. I fell for her in pieces. The way she hummed when she cooked. How she danced barefoot in the kitchen when no one was watching. How she cried during Finding Nemo and tried to pretend she wasn't. We kissed for the first time under the streetlight outside her apartment. It was cold. My hands were shaking, nerves, not the weather, and she leaned in, pressed her lips to mine gently, like a question she already knew the answer to. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because I was scared, but because I had this wild, electric feeling in my chest. Like something had finally clicked into place. Like all the quiet in my life had led up to her voice. The weeks that followed were magic. We took road trips to nowhere. She'd roll the window down, stick her hand out, and let the wind catch her fingers like she was trying to touch the sky. We shared secrets in motel parking lots, made midnight pancakes, slow danced in gas station aisles when our song came on. People always say love feels like fireworks. But with Claire, it felt like coming home. And she loved me back, not in words, but in the way she looked at me when I wasn't looking. The way she always waited for me to unlock my car door before getting in, even though hers was open. The way she'd say, "Hey, you okay?" And I knew she wasn't just asking. We weren't perfect. We fought sometimes, over dumb things like forgotten texts or mismatched expectations. But even in the fights, I never doubted her heart. She was real. Raw. Honest. There's a Polaroid of us taken on her old camera. We're sitting on a picnic blanket in Forsyth Park. She's leaning into me, and I'm laughing at something she said. Behind us, Spanish moss hangs from the trees like whispers. I keep that photo in my wallet. Still. Because in that moment, with the sun filtering through the leaves, and her hand in mine, I thought we had forever. I thought this was the start of a lifetime. But life has a cruel way of changing chapters without warning. And love, real love, it never prepares you for what's coming next. It started small. Claire began forgetting things. At first, it was nothing, or so I told myself. Misplaced keys, a missed coffee date, a movie we'd apparently seen together that she swore we hadn't. I teased her. "You're turning into your grandma," I said once, laughing as she scoured her purse for the second time. She smiled, but something in her eyes flickered. Then came the headaches. She'd close her eyes mid-conversation and wince like something sharp was pressing behind her forehead. I'd offer to take her to urgent care, but she'd wave me off. "Just a migraine," she'd say. "Too much time staring at screens." But I saw the tremble in her hands. The moments she'd go quiet for too long. The pauses that lasted just a few seconds too long to be normal. I still remember the night it got real. We were in bed. She was curled into my side, our legs tangled under the sheets. The TV was playing something mindless in the background, a cooking show, I think. She turned to me and asked, "What's your name again?" I laughed. She didn't. She stared at me with this soft confusion, like she was trying to reach for something in the dark. Then it passed, she blinked, smiled nervously, and said, "Kidding." But I knew. Deep down, I knew. The next morning, I made her an appointment. She protested, of course. "It's stress," she insisted. "I've just got a lot on my mind." But I saw the fear starting to grow behind her words. The waiting room was too cold. The fluorescent lights too bright. Claire tapped her fingers against her knee while I filled out the paperwork. The doctor, a gray-haired neurologist with tired eyes, ran tests. Asked questions. Did scans. Days passed. We waited. I thought the worst it could be was a vitamin deficiency. Maybe a pinched nerve. Something fixable. Something small. But when we sat down in that office and the door clicked shut, the air changed. "Claire," the doctor said gently, "your brain scans show signs of early onset neurodegeneration. We believe it may be a rare form of..." I didn't hear the rest. My ears rang. Claire's hand tightened around mine. She was nodding, but her lips were pale. I tried to speak, but my mouth was dry. In movies, they play sad music when moments like that happen. But in real life, there's just silence. Cold, suffocating silence. We drove home without saying a word. The sky outside was overcast. Even the world seemed to grieve with us. At the apartment, she sat on the couch and stared at nothing. I made tea with shaking hands, set the mug down in front of her. She looked up and whispered, "Are you going to leave?" It broke me. I dropped to my knees in front of her and said, "Never." She cried then. Really cried. Not the kind of crying you can comfort, but the kind that comes from deep inside, when the future starts falling apart in your hands. That week, everything slowed down. We canceled plans. Stopped talking about next summer. Stopped saying, "someday." Instead, we started counting things. The number of books she could still read without getting confused. The number of steps from our bedroom to the kitchen. The number of times she could remember my name each morning. I began documenting everything. I recorded her voice when she told me stories. I wrote down her favorite meals. I filmed us dancing in the living room on a Tuesday night because I didn't know how many more we had left. Her memory began to drift. One night she looked at me across the dinner table and asked, "Did we ever go to Paris?" I'd never been. Neither had she. But I said, "Yeah." "You wore a red scarf and made fun of my French accent." She laughed. And for a second, the light came back. But she was fading. Her scent lingered on my shirts longer than her thoughts stayed in her mind. She forgot how to make coffee. Forgot her sister's name. One afternoon, she walked out of our building barefoot and wandered into the street before a neighbor brought her back. I became her caretaker. Her anchor. Her journal. Her calendar. Her everything. But no matter how tightly I held her, she was slipping through my fingers like smoke. And I was starting to forget who I was without her. Then came the worst day. It was just past midnight. I woke up to find the bed empty. Panic set in. I checked the kitchen, the bathroom, the hallway. Nothing. The door was cracked open. I ran outside in bare feet, heart pounding, calling her name into the dark. And there she was, standing at the edge of the lake near our apartment complex, shivering, lost, staring at the water like she didn't know what it was. When I touched her shoulder, she flinched. Looked at me like I was a stranger. "Claire," I whispered. She blinked. "Do I know you?" The words cut deeper than anything I'd ever felt. That night, I sat in the bathroom with the shower running so she couldn't hear me cry. And I knew I was losing her. Not all at once, but piece by piece. I stopped recognizing the man in the mirror. My face was thinner. Eyes heavier. Sleep was a luxury I couldn't afford, and shaving felt like a waste of time. My world had shrunk to the four walls of our apartment, and even those felt like they were closing in. Claire still lived there. But not my Claire. Some mornings, she was sharp, almost herself. She'd remember my name, remember to ask me about my day, even make a joke like she used to. I clung to those moments like a drowning man clings to driftwood. But most days, she was quiet. Confused. Scared of her own reflection. She started calling me the nice man instead of my name. Would look at our photos on the wall and ask, "Who's that with me?" I started talking to myself. In whispers, mostly. While doing the dishes. Folding laundry. I'd mutter things like, "You can't fall apart. She needs you," or, "Just make it through the hour." I wasn't okay. Not even close. But I refused to leave her. Refused to quit. Even as friends stopped calling. Even as my job cut my hours because I kept missing work. Even as my own family started gently suggesting assisted care. "No," I told them. "She stays with me." The truth? I didn't know how to be without her. Claire had once been the rhythm of my days, the color in every scene, the laughter in every room. Now she was a ghost walking through our life, and I was the only one trying to hold on to her fading outline. I started keeping a notebook, pages and pages of everything she used to love. Her favorite flowers, ranunculus, the way she liked her toast, slightly burnt, the way she hated the word moist, and loved thunderstorms but only if she was wrapped in a blanket. I kept it all. Because she couldn't. She started waking up in the middle of the night screaming. Said there were people in the walls. That the lights were too loud. that her thoughts were turning into static. One night, I found her in the kitchen, cutting her hair with the dull kitchen scissors. I needed to let it go, she said, smiling crookedly. It was too heavy. I sat on the floor and cried. I didn't try to stop her. Because I understood. Grief is a slow, crawling thing when the person you love is still alive, but slipping away. I lost myself in the routine. Meds at 8 o'clock. Breakfast at 9 o'clock. Walks if she was stable. Therapy on Thursdays. Bathe her when she forgot how. Guide her hand when she couldn't use a fork. Read to her when she forgot how to hold a book. Sometimes, she'd hum a tune, one I didn't know, and stare out the window like she was seeing something far beyond the trees. I'm going soon, she said one afternoon. I froze. Going where? She didn't answer. Just smiled, not sadly, but peacefully, and went back to staring at the clouds. That night, I sat beside her bed for hours, watching her chest rise and fall. I couldn't sleep. I was terrified that if I did, I'd wake up to nothing. The man I was, the one who used to write songs, who used to laugh with friends, who dreamed of road trips and backpacking across Europe, he was gone. Replaced by this husk of a man who only existed to keep her safe. And yet, there was a moment. A small, stupid moment. I was brushing her hair. She'd had a good day, remembered my name, even said, I love you, like she used to. And as I brushed through the soft knots in her curls, she looked up and said, You're still here. Of course I'm here. No, she said softly. You're still here. And I realized then, through all the fading, the slipping, the vanishing, some part of her still saw me. That night, I walked into the bathroom, turned on the light, and looked at my reflection. Still hollow eyes. Still cracked lips. But behind all that, something else. Something stubborn. Something alive. I wasn't the same man she fell in love with. But I was still her man. And I wasn't giving up. Not yet. Because even a shadow fights for the light. It was a Tuesday when I found the envelope. Claire had fallen asleep on the couch, her head resting on my lap after a rare afternoon of calm. The TV hummed quietly in the background, some nature documentary we weren't really watching. I reached for a blanket to cover her and knocked over a stack of old mail on the coffee table. Most of it was junk, credit card offers, expired coupons. But one thick envelope slid out from between the others like it had been hiding. It was addressed to Claire. From a place I didn't recognize, Brightmoor Clinical Research Institute. I stared at it for a moment. Claire hadn't told me about any clinic. She never mentioned any institute. My stomach tightened. I opened it. Inside were medical reports, pages of charts, scans, long paragraphs of terminology I didn't fully understand. But one sentence near the top was underlined in red pen. Subject responded poorly to stage 2 trial medication. Neurological degeneration accelerated beyond projected curve. Subject? Trial medication? I flipped through more pages. There were legal waivers. Consent forms. One dated 3 months before her first symptoms appeared. Claire had signed up for a medical trial. Without telling me. And it had made her worse. My hands shook as I read the words again, trying to convince myself I'd misunderstood. But it was all there, black and white, she'd taken part in something experimental. Something secret. I gently slid her head off my lap, stood up, and paced the room. My pulse was pounding. I grabbed my laptop and started digging. Brightmoor Clinical Research Institute wasn't a hospital. It wasn't even listed as a real clinic. It was owned by a private pharmaceutical company, a shadowy outfit with barely any online footprint. No patient reviews. No public records. But on a Reddit thread buried deep in a medical ethics forum, I found something. A whistleblower post from 2 years ago. Brightmoor is running cognitive enhancement trials without FDA clearance. They're paying desperate patients under the table. Some participants are reporting serious memory loss, personality shifts, hallucinations. One woman disappeared after the trial, no records, no follow-up. I stared at the screen in disbelief. They'd done this to her. Claire hadn't gotten sick. She'd been poisoned. I didn't sleep that night. I stayed up reading, researching, calling numbers that went nowhere. I emailed the address on the envelope, no reply. I called a dozen times, disconnected. But I wasn't stopping. The next day, I drove to the address listed on one of the documents. It was 2 hours away, tucked in the industrial outskirts of Atlanta. The building looked abandoned. Gray, windowless, with a faded company logo above a locked front door. But around the back, I saw a delivery entrance cracked open. I walked in. Fluorescent lights buzzed above. The place smelled like bleach and old paper. It was eerily quiet. I found a receptionist, a young woman who looked terrified the second I mentioned Claire's name. She tried to shut me down. Told me they had no patient records by that name. When I pushed harder, she threatened to call security. So I left. But not before stealing a clipboard from the counter. Back in the car, I flipped through the pages. Hidden in the middle, a sheet with patient IDs and trial batch numbers. One of them matched Claire's. I had a lead. The next week became a blur of calls, confrontations, and searching. I found a former lab assistant on LinkedIn and messaged him every day until he agreed to meet. His name was Michael. He looked like he hadn't slept in months. We met at a gas station off I-20, like we were in a spy movie or something. I showed him Claire's documents. He recognized the batch number immediately. That trial was shut down. Quietly, he said. A few of the participants, they didn't make it. I felt like throwing up. But they knew, he continued. They knew there was a risk. And they pushed it anyway. Because the funding was good. Because the results were promising. I asked him why Claire would have agreed. He hesitated. Then said, some of them were told it could help them, cure depression, improve memory, make them sharper. But others, they were paid. Cash. Under the table. No strings. Claire never did anything for money. But maybe someone talked her into it. Maybe they made it sound safe. Or maybe she was trying to fix something inside herself she never told me about. I asked Michael if there was a way to reverse the damage. He looked at me like I'd asked him to undo gravity. No, he said. But there are files. Records. Evidence. I took it all. Then I went public. Reddit. Twitter. Local news. I leaked every document, every voice recording, every scan. I didn't care if I got sued. I wanted them to come after me. And the story caught fire. Whistleblowers came out. Former patients spoke up. Investigators launched probes. Brightmoor shut down their offices within a week, but it was too late. The truth was out. Justice, or something like it, was beginning. But none of it could bring her back. Claire watched it all from our couch in silence, her eyes hollow. She didn't understand what was happening, not really. Sometimes, she'd look at the news clips of protesters holding signs with her name and say, "She looks nice." She didn't know she was the reason. But I did. And I promised her, even if she didn't remember who she was, the world would. There's a strange silence that follows the storm. After the news stories died down, after the protests ended and the clinics were shut down, there was no victory parade. No dramatic moment of closure. Just quiet. Claire was still sick. And I was not the man I used to be. I didn't recognize myself anymore, not in the mirror, not in old photos, not even in my own memories. The man who once dreamed of writing novels and owning a bookstore now spent his days labeling pill bottles and coaxing the love of his life to eat scrambled eggs. There's something about grief that doesn't hit you all at once. It's not a wave. It's a tide. It creeps in slowly, washes over you, takes you without warning. You don't even realize how far you've drifted until you look up one day and the shore is gone. That was me. But I didn't stop. The fire that kept me going, that raw, feral desire to make it mean something, had taken root in my bones. I started volunteering at memory care centers. Not just because I wanted to help, but because I needed to feel like all of this pain meant something. Like maybe Claire's suffering had carved out a space in the world where someone else could be saved. I read to patients, talked to families, became an advocate, gave interviews, testified at state hearings, worked with lawyers who were building class action lawsuits against Brightmoor's parent company. The guy who once hated public speaking now stood in front of microphones, shaking but steady, holding up a photo of Claire and saying, "This is who they hurt." I think part of me believed, or hoped, that if I screamed loud enough, fate would hear me. That maybe the universe would reward me. That maybe Claire would wake up one day and remember everything. But healing doesn't work like that. And neither does love. Because love doesn't rewind. It transforms. And it transforms you. There was this moment, I remember it clear as day. Claire had a bad episode. She'd trashed the apartment, knocked over lamps, ripped photos off the wall, screamed for her mother, who had passed away years ago. I found her curled in the corner of the kitchen, knees pulled to her chest, sobbing. She didn't recognize me. And I didn't cry. I just sat down beside her. Held her hands. Let her breathe. Let her panic settle like dust. After a while, she looked at me and said, "You're kind." Not, "You're mine." Not, "I remember you." Just, "You're kind." And for some reason, that broke me. Because for the first time, I realized she didn't need me to be the man I used to be. She just needed me as I was now. That night, I looked in the mirror again. I didn't see a lover, or a boyfriend, or the romantic version of myself that had once danced in the rain and made pancakes at 2 a.m. I saw a caregiver. A fighter. Someone rebuilt by grief, and still standing. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't poetic. But it was real. And real love isn't about who you were at the beginning. It's about who you're willing to become when everything falls apart. I stopped waiting for a miracle. And started focusing on moments. One smile. One memory. One gentle afternoon walk where she called me honey and held my hand without asking who I was. That was enough. Because I was no longer holding on to the past. I was holding on to her. In whatever way she existed now. And that was the greatest transformation of all. Claire passed away on a Wednesday. It was early, just before dawn, when the world was still holding its breath and the sky was still painted in that deep, sleepy blue. I was beside her, holding her hand. Just like I had been every day for the last year. Her breaths had been shallow for a while. The doctors called it progression. I hated that word. Like it was some kind of milestone. She didn't speak that morning. Just looked at me with those fading eyes. But in them, I saw something. Not recognition exactly, not in the way we all hope for in the movies, but presence. A quiet knowing. Her lips parted. One word. Stay. I told her I wasn't going anywhere. And then, she left. No noise. No flash. No drama. Just stillness. I remember the silence more than anything. The kind of silence that makes everything feel heavier. The kind that tells you something holy just happened. And something horrible. I didn't cry right away. I sat there, numb, still holding her hand. It didn't feel like she was gone, not yet. Her presence still lingered in the room. Her scent still on the pillows. Her favorite song playing softly in the background from the playlist I made for her last month. It felt impossible to believe that someone so vivid, so radiant, so herself, could just vanish. But she had. And yet, she hadn't. Because something strange happens when someone you love leaves this world. The world doesn't feel empty. It feels full, almost too full, like every shadow, every beam of sunlight, every whisper of wind is a message from them. You start to hear their laughter in the leaves. See their face in a stranger's smile. Feel their warmth in a song they once hummed. Claire never really left me. She just changed shape. I took a long time off after she passed. Disappeared from the advocacy work. Stopped giving interviews. I just needed to be alone with my grief. But grief, I learned, isn't the enemy. It's the echo of love. A proof that what you had was real. That it mattered. That it still matters. Eventually, I came back. I started a foundation in her name. Helped families dealing with memory loss. Created a scholarship for women studying neurology. I started writing again, not fiction, not yet, but stories. Real stories. Stories about people like Claire. About love that refuses to die, even when the body does. And through it all, I kept hearing her voice. Stay. Not just beside her in that final moment, but in the world. In the work. In the truth. Stay with the pain. Stay with the memories. Stay with the love. Because love and pain are not opposites. They're reflections. You don't get to have one without the other. You can't truly love without risking devastation. And you can't truly grieve without having known something beautiful. That's what Claire taught me. And I carry her with me now. Not in photographs. Not just in memories. But in the man I became because I loved her, and lost her. People ask me now if I'll ever fall in love again. I don't know. Maybe. But I do know this. Claire was the kind of love that rewrites your DNA. That etches itself into your blood and your breath and your bones. You don't walk away from a love like that unchanged. And honestly, I wouldn't want to. Because the pain I feel when I think of her, it's not just sadness. It's proof. Proof that I got to experience something real. Something rare. Something eternal. Claire once told me, back when things were good, we don't get to choose how long love lasts. But we do get to choose how deeply we feel it. And I felt it. God, I felt all of it. So if you ask me now what I believe in, I believe in love that doesn't make sense. I believe in staying when it's hard. I believe in becoming someone else for someone you love. And most of all, I believe that love and pain are not two different roads. They're one. Always one.